On behalf of the Parliament, the committee is conducting this inquiry into the 2021-22 budget estimates.
How much have you spent to date on the contact tracing platform?
The actual platform itself last year cost $34.1 million.
Would you be able to outline the new Big Build initiatives in the budget?
There's $2.7 billion allocated in the budget for level crossing removals, and we've had a good go at that already. There's additional investment of $15 million on the Cranbourne and Hurst Bridge Line projects for to include bike paths, particularly in these projects. There's the money that is being invested in Melbourne Airport and Geelong Fast Rail that's shown in this budget. And of course, the Suburban Rail Loop and North East Link also have big allocations as well.
How are decisions made on which schools are upgraded?
Enrolment growth, demand pressure, condition of the school, and thirdly, functionality.
Could you please explain for the committee's benefit the funding that's outlined on table 1.14 and how this will enable more Victorians to get that critical surgery they need as soon as possible?
There is $136 million to support the public health and hospital services to provide that catch-up elective surgery.
How much will the Westgate Tunnel project cost Victorians?
It is a matter that we are, under the terms of the contract, working through, and particularly in the terms that Transurban have indicated to date their failure to deliver against the contract that they have signed with the government, and we are continuing to work through those matters.
Will it cost more than the $6.3 billion that's in the budget papers?
I am not going to provide any further speculation on the cost of the contract.
I was hoping you'd be able to take us through what the Emergency Management Operational Communications Program is and when that will be implemented.
We'll be moving to the digital regional mobile radio network by the 30th of June 2023, and that will replace the old analogue state mobile radio network. These are very large undertakings. They need to be done and done well, and so that is why we have the date that we have there.
You have not replaced to many of the schools in regional areas the computers that were lost last year that the grade 6s have taken home.
I made the call that those students should retain the devices that have been provided.
Right,
funding was then provided to schools to ensure that they were appropriately recompensed.
I think that the public health directions and whether or not they are issued directly relates to whether the estimates in the strategic outlook will be achieved or not, and that directly hinges on the proportionality decisions of the public health team.
So proportionality is at the absolute heart of the public health advice that is given, and that is enshrined in the Victorian Charter of Human Rights. That is something that we have to consider for every decision that we make.
There's a discrepancy obviously between when business cases are made public and whether they're not made public.
Business cases are fed into the process led by the Department of Treasury and Finance, and for projects, some are high value, high risk projects, others go through the budget process. The decisions to release business cases are not mine alone.
Basically, it's the discretion of Cabinet.
I mean, as it has been practiced for all governments of all different persuasions, the release of the business case is a matter for that government.
What is the government doing? We're putting a lot of extra money into education, but what are we actually doing to get better results, particularly in maths, which is an area that we actually went backwards in?
We need to make it more engaging, particularly for primary school students. The second thing that we are doing is addressing the issue of teachers working out of field. If you've got a teacher working out of field teaching maths, they're not going to be comfortable, they're not going to be confident. So we've put some funding into training up those teachers who are working out of field. The third thing we're doing is incentives to attract teachers in field to go to hard-to staff locations, particularly in rural and regional Victoria.
I think it'd be really good for the committee to understand more about the broad statewide benefits of the suburban rail loop.
There'll be super hubs at Clayton, Broadmeadows and Sunshine, providing direct interchange for regional services. So, for example, if you rely on public transport to travel from the Gippsland and Hume regions into Melbourne, you can do so by connecting in at Clayton and Broadmeadows, and you won't have to come into the CBD.
We've seen costs reported between 50 billion to 150 billion.
The business and investment case is being finalised, and that information will be made available with the release of the business and investment case.
I'm wondering if you could please explain how the zero and low emissions vehicle accelerating adoption program will help support Victorians access a zero emissions vehicle.
We are the only state to make available direct subsidies to make it cheaper, more affordable for people to buy a ZEV vehicle, and we are specifically targeting the lower cost, the lower end of the market in terms of the cost of the vehicle. So we're not here targeting the super duper Teslas out there. People who can afford that, they don't need a subsidy.
Given the necessity for people to follow the government's directions in this pandemic, what about the trust and confidence between the public and its government? Why won't you release the public health advice?
I assert, based on what is publicly available right now, and every month is renewed through the Chief Health Officer's report, which is hugely detailed, to the Parliament around the public health restrictions and the reasons and the material around why the restrictions are what they are.
I'd like to refer you to Budget Paper 3, pages 21 and 30, and I'm interested in understanding how the Victorian Academy of Teaching and Leadership, how it will benefit the teaching profession.
The Academy will be a cross-sectorial statutory authority which will deliver a new Australia First program of advanced professional learning for high-performing teachers in government, Catholic and independent schools.
How will this initiative help teachers in regional Victoria, talking about the regional sites?
This will address a key issue for teachers and leaders in rural and regional schools, which has been the difficulty in accessing high-quality professional learning. They often have to drive for hours and hours, no longer.